The legend spoke of a warship that defied all logic, a ship whispered about in secret military meetings, laughed at by alien strategists, and dismissed as a human fairy tale. It was said to be faster than light, immune to enemy fire, and able to appear where no fleet had ever gone. They called it the Phantom of Earth, a warship born from human imagination, a story meant to keep hope alive in humanity's darkest hours. Before we start, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed. But then, during the Battle of Orion's Maw, it appeared. The Galactic Dominion, a massive empire of alien warlords, had spent decades crushing humanity. Earth's colonies were in ruins, its fleet scattered, its leaders desperate. The Dominion's flagship, GalacticPrime, led 1,000 ships against the last human forces near the dying red star of Orion's Maw. Admiral Zorth of the Dominion watched the battle from his command deck. It was another slaughter. The human fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, was falling apart. Then, without warning, the Dominion scanners picked up something impossible. A ship, no, a ghost, appeared in the middle of their formation. Its black hull shimmered like the void, absorbing every scan. It moved in ways that defied physics, vanishing and reappearing like a mirage. One moment, it was behind their front line. The next, it was in their command formation. The Dominion ships opened fire in panic, but their weapons passed through the ghostly ship as if it weren't there. Then it struck. A single burst of energy, not in a straight line but in a twisting arc, ripped through the Dominion fleet. Their first battleship, Varric's Claw, exploded. The energy pulse bounced from ship to ship, tearing through hulls and igniting reactors. Destruction spread like wildfire. Zorth stumbled back. "Impossible!" he hissed. On the human side, soldiers and commanders stared at their screens in disbelief. For years, they'd heard whispers of the Phantom of Earth, a legend, a myth. None had believed it real. Captain Elias Drake sat in his command chair, eyes wide as he watched the Phantom cut through the Dominion fleet. "I thought it was just a story," he muttered. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Vega, whispered, "Apparently, so did they." The battle turned. The Dominion, once confident, was now being torn apart. The Phantom moved like a ghost, striking and vanishing, reappearing where no ship should be. One by one, the Dominion's ships were destroyed. Even GalacticPrime shook under the Phantom's attacks. Zorth had no choice. He ordered a retreat. The Dominion, once unstoppable, fled in terror. In the silence of Orion's Maw, the Phantom lingered for a moment. Then it flickered and disappeared. Drake exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But one question remained. Where had the Phantom come from? And where had it gone? The war wasn't over, but for the first time in decades, the Dominion knew fear. The journey back to Earth was quiet. The battle should have been a victory to celebrate, but every officer on the HSS Valor felt uneasy. What had they just seen? What was the Phantom of Earth? And if it was on their side, why did it stay hidden? Captain Drake sat in the war room staring at holograms of the battle. The Dominion fleet had been destroyed as if by an invisible force. Their best weapons had failed. Their strongest ships had fallen. But how? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Vega stepped in, her face serious. "Sir, Admiral Kepler wants a full report as soon as we land." Drake sighed. Of course he does. Kepler was Earth's top military leader, a hardened veteran who'd seen humanity pushed to the edge too many times. If anyone would demand answers, it was him. Vega hesitated. "Sir, there's something else." She handed him a holopad. "We found a data file from the battle. It's incomplete, but..." Drake looked at the screen. It showed a blurry, distorted image of a massive ship, black, shifting, and covered in strange symbols. One symbol stood out, an ancient Earth marking. Drake's breath caught. Where did this come from? Vega's voice was tense. It was buried in our system logs, almost like it wanted us to find it. A chill ran down Drake's spine. That symbol, it was old, older than humanity's space age. It had been seen in ruins on Mars, in deep-sea wrecks, in myths of lost civilizations. It was a mark of something forgotten. The Phantom of Earth wasn't just a secret weapon, it was something much older. And it had just revealed itself. As the Valor sped toward Earth, Drake knew one thing. Whatever had saved them at Orion's Maw, it had its own purpose. And they were about to find out what it was. Earth appeared in the distance, a blue beacon of humanity's last hope. The HSS Valor approached, escorted by 2 other battered ships that had survived Orion's Maw. But there were no cheers, no celebrations. Captain Drake stood on the bridge, watching as Admiral Kepler's face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Drake," Kepler said, "you're 2 hours late." Drake crossed his arms. "We had to make sure we weren't followed, sir." Kepler's eyes narrowed. "And were you?" Drake shook his head. "Not by anything we could detect." Kepler leaned forward. "We need to talk. Face to face. Bring your senior officers to War Room Alpha in 30 minutes. The screen went dark. Drake exhaled. Vega muttered, "He's in a great mood." Drake sighed. "Let's not keep him waiting." 30 minutes later, Drake, Vega, and Chief Engineer Ramos stood in the war room. Admiral Kepler and 3 other high-ranking officers were there. "Sit," Kepler ordered. Drake and his team obeyed. Kepler got straight to the point. "Tell me exactly what happened at Orion's Maw." Drake explained the battle, the hopeless odds, the Phantom's sudden appearance, its impossible movements, and the destruction it caused. When he finished, Kepler's expression was unreadable. "You're saying the Phantom of Earth is real?" Drake nodded. "And it's not just real, it's something we don't understand." He showed Kepler the image of the ship with the ancient Earth symbol. Kepler stared at it for a long time. "This isn't the first time we've seen this symbol." Drake frowned. "What do you mean?" Kepler tapped a command. Images appeared, ancient carvings, old blueprints, and distorted footage of something in deep space. "This symbol has been appearing throughout human history. Long before we had space travel." Vega whispered, "Then what is it?" Kepler took a deep breath. "There was a project, Project Revenant." Drake leaned forward. "I've never heard of it." "You wouldn't have," Kepler said. "It was buried before you were born." He pulled up a classified document. The text was mostly redacted, but what remained was chilling. Project Revenant. Objective, unknown. Origin, unknown. Status: terminated, inconclusive. Below the text was a grainy image of a massive structure being built on Earth centuries ago. A warship hidden beneath the Arctic ice, buried before humanity had even discovered faster-than-light travel. "We didn't build the Phantom of Earth," Kepler said. "We found it." The room fell silent. Drake finally spoke. "And you're just telling us this now?" Kepler gave him a hard look. "Because until today we thought it was dead." Drake stared at the image. If humanity hadn't built the Phantom, who had? And why had it returned now? Then the alarms blared. A voice crackled over the comms. "Unidentified object inbound, extreme velocity, it's static." Drake and the officers rushed to the nearest screen, in orbit, descending. Toward Earth was the Phantom of Earth. And this time, it wasn't alone. The war room erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled to their stations as the holographic display filled with red warnings. Captain Drake stared at the live feed. The Phantom loomed above Earth, its black hull blotting out the stars. But that wasn't what sent chills down his spine. 5 smaller ships, sleek and unnatural, had appeared alongside it. Drake turned to Kepler. "You said the Phantom was buried on Earth." Kepler's face was pale. "It was." "Then what are those?" Drake demanded, pointing at the unknown ships. Kepler didn't answer. The comms officer's voice cut through the noise. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Phantom." The room fell silent. "Put it through," Kepler said. The holographic display flickered. A deep, distorted voice filled the room. "We have returned." Drake clenched his fists. "Who are you?" A pause. Then, We are the Forgotten. The word sent a chill through the room. Kepler leaned forward. You fought for us at Orion's Maw. Why? What do you want? The voice was calm. It was not your war to lose. Drake narrowed his eyes. Then what war is ours? The display changed. A star map appeared, stretching far beyond known human space. Red markers began appearing. Hundreds. Thousands. A storm of hostile signals. They are coming. Kepler's breath hitched. Who? The voice whispered. The ones who erased us. The room fell deathly still. Drake exchanged a look with Vega. The Dominion had been humanity's greatest enemy, but now it seemed they were just the beginning. Whatever was coming next had once wiped an entire species from history. The Phantom of Earth hadn't come to save humanity. It had come to prepare them. The war room was silent as the weight of the revelation sank in. The Phantom had spoken. They are coming. Captain Drake stared at the star map filled with red markers. The Dominion had nearly destroyed humanity. What could be worse? Admiral Kepler's voice was steady but tense. Clarify. Who erased you? The Phantom's response was immediate. The architects. A hush fell over the room. Kepler exchanged a glance with his intelligence officer, but no one recognized the name. We have no records of such a species. The Phantom's voice rumbled. You were not meant to. Drake's mind raced. You're saying they erased you and then erased the memory of you? A pause. Correct. The officers shifted uneasily. If this was true, they weren't just fighting conquerors. They were fighting something that could rewrite history. Vega leaned forward. Why now? If these architects destroyed you, why haven't they come for us before? The Phantom hesitated. They left you unshaped. You were small, weak, unworthy of correction. Drake exhaled. Until now. Humanity had grown beyond what the architects considered insignificant. And now, they were coming to fix their mistake. Kepler's eyes hardened. How much time do we have? Uncertain. Their reach is vast. Their return? Inevitable. A cold silence fell. This wasn't just a war for survival. It was a war against something so ancient and powerful that it had already erased an entire civilization. Drake squared his shoulders. Then we need to fight. Kepler nodded. Agreed. But we don't know their weapons, their numbers, their technology. We're fighting ghosts. The Phantom's voice hummed, almost amused. Not alone. A new image appeared. Deep space. Coordinates. There are others. Drake leaned in. Other what? Survivors? The officers exchanged startled looks. You mean there are others like you? Vega asked. Pieces of the Forgotten remain. Scattered. Hiding. Waiting. Drake felt his pulse quicken. Humanity wasn't alone. If these Forgotten could be found, if they could be awakened, there might still be a chance. Kepler stared at the map, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to Drake. You wanted a war captain? Congratulations. You've got one. Drake smirked. Then let's wake the dead. With that, the HSS Valor prepared to set out. Because somewhere in the darkness of space, hidden in the ruins of history, the last remnants of a forgotten war were waiting. The HSS Valor launched into the void, pushing beyond the edges of human-explored space. They weren't alone. 4 other warships, the last of humanity's elite fleet, followed in formation. Their mission was simple. Find the survivors. Awaken the Forgotten. Prepare for war. Captain Drake stood at the command deck, staring at the rapidly approaching jump point. The Phantom had provided coordinates deep in uncharted space, past Dominion territory, in a sector long believed to be empty. But something was out there. Vega counted down. Jump in 3, 2, 1. The ship lurched as it tore through the jump gate. Space folded around them. For a split second, Drake thought he saw something, a shadowy form lurking in the folds of reality. Then they re-emerged. Silence. Darkness. And then, Vega whispered, "You need to see this." Drake turned to the viewport. His breath caught. The sector wasn't empty. It was filled with wreckage. Massive ships, larger than anything humanity had ever built, drifting silently. Their hulls were scorched, their forms shattered. Some bore markings similar to the Phantoms, while others were completely alien. "It's not just debris," Ramos muttered. "It's a graveyard." Drake clenched his fists. "Scan everything. Look for survivors." The ships spread out, weaving through the floating ruins. Then the sensors flared. Vega sat up straight. "Sir, we've got a signal." Drake's pulse quickened. "Where?" She tapped furiously at her console. "Beneath us, buried under one of the wrecks." A distorted, flickering message came through. "They left us. Buried. So cold." Drake's stomach turned. Someone, or something, was still alive. And it had been waiting a long time. The bridge of the HSS Valor was tense as the broken transmission crackled through the speakers. "They left us. Buried. So cold." Captain Drake felt his heartbeat hammer in his chest. Whoever, or whatever, was down there had been waiting for an eternity. Vega worked to clean up the signal. "Sir, it's weak. Old tech. The frequency is barely holding together." Drake made his decision. "Get me a visual." The holodisplay flickered as the ship's scanners focused beneath the debris field. Then, for the first time, they saw it. A ship, larger than anything. In the human fleet, older than any Dominion warship, lay entombed beneath layers of wreckage. Its hull was fractured but intact, its black surface eerily similar to the Phantoms. And then, the impossible happened. The ship moved. A pulse of energy flickered from its core, weak and sputtering like a dying breath. Vega sucked in a sharp breath. "Sir, it's still alive." Drake turned to Ramos. "Can we pull it out?" Ramos rubbed his chin. "If we clear the debris, maybe. But if it's still functional, we don't know how it'll react." Drake didn't hesitate. "Then let's wake it up." The Valor's thrusters roared to life, and the accompanying fleet moved in. Tractor beams locked onto the massive wreck, slowly peeling away the debris. As the last piece drifted free, a deep, shuddering groan echoed through space. Then, the ship's lights flickered on. Drake's breath caught. The glow was dim, pulsing, almost organic. And then the transmission came through again, clearer this time. "You are late." Vega turned sharply toward Drake. "It knows us." The realization sent chills down his spine. The Phantom had led them here. To this. Drake swallowed hard. "This is Captain Elias Drake of the HSS Valor. Who am I speaking to?" A pause. Then the voice came, smooth and ancient yet undeniably human. "I was once called Commander Orion." Silence. Every officer on the bridge exchanged stunned glances. Drake's throat went dry. The name Orion was legendary. One of Earth's first deep space captains, a pioneer who had vanished over 300 years ago. But that was impossible. He should have been dead. Drake steadied his voice. "Commander Orion, you've been missing for centuries. How are you still alive?" The voice hummed through the speakers, heavy with sorrow. "Because we were never allowed to die." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Before Drake could respond, the ship's systems roared fully to life. The black hull shifted, the technology warping and reforming itself like liquid steel. And then, in the depths of the wreck, something else woke up. Alarms blared. Vega's voice shook. "Sir, something else is coming online inside that ship." Drake turned back to the viewport just as a second voice broke through the transmission. Not human, not friendly. "We have been found. The architects will come." Drake felt his stomach drop. They weren't the only ones who had just woken up. The bridge of the HSS Valor fell into stunned silence. Captain Drake gripped the edge of his console as Commander Orion's voice echoed through the speakers, laced with ancient sorrow. Because we were never allowed to die. The lights on Orion's ship pulsed rhythmically, a heartbeat of something, impossibly old and burdened by memories. Vega's voice broke the silence. Captain, if that's really Commander Orion, then the architects have been here for centuries. Watching, waiting. Drake nodded, his eyes locked on the colossal, shifting form of Orion's vessel. It was changing, its black hull undulating, like liquid metal. Something ancient was waking up inside. He activated the comms. Orion, if the architects are coming, we need to know how to fight them. What are they? A long pause. Then Orion's voice came back, hollow and haunted. They are the first, the makers of order. They weave reality to their design. When we grew beyond their vision, they erased us and made you. The revelation hit Drake like a physical blow. Humanity was an accident, a remnant left behind by ancient conquerors. Vega whispered, "We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting for existence." Alarms blared across the bridge. Ramos shouted, "Captain, energy spikes across the wreckage field. Multiple signatures. High magnitude." Drake looked out at the void, his blood running cold. The debris around Orion's ship was moving. Hulls cracked, shattered pieces reassembled. Ancient warships reformed as dark energy surged through them. Vega's face turned pale. They're rebuilding themselves. The ships powered up, ominous. Red lights igniting along their spines. Weapon systems locked onto the human fleet. Orion's voice came again, weak and distant. The Guardians, left to protect the tomb. They are the first line of defense. Drake's jaw clenched. And the second? The architects. The stars flickered. Space itself seemed to ripple. A tear formed in the fabric of reality. Shapes emerged, impossibly vast and incomprehensible, like shadows cast by ancient gods. Their forms defied geometry, shifting and warping, bending light around them. The architects had arrived. Admiral Kepler's voice came through the comms, urgent and grim. "Drake, get your fleet out of there. Now!" Drake's eyes burned with defiance. "Negative, Admiral. If we run now, they'll follow us home. This ends here." He turned to his crew. "All ships, engage the Guardians. Protect Orion's vessel. We're waking up the Forgotten." The Valor's weapons roared to life, blazing beams tearing through the darkness. The rest of the fleet followed, forming a protective perimeter around Orion's ship. But the Guardians were relentless. Their ancient technology shrugged off human firepower, weapons pulsing with energies that bent space. Human ships exploded, brilliant flashes against the black void. Orion's ship continued to shift, panels opening to reveal massive conduits of light. Power surged through the ancient vessel, its core igniting with a blinding glow. Drake's console flared with warnings. Vega shouted, "Energy output off the scale! It's rewriting itself!" The ship was transforming, reshaping into a weapon from a forgotten war. Orion's voice was steadier now, infused with purpose. "They erased us, but they could not destroy us. We were built to defy them." The conduits fired. A beam of pure, reality-warping energy sliced through the Guardians. Space twisted around the blast. The ancient constructs shattering as existence itself rejected them. But the architects watched, unmoved. Their forms shifted, their shadows growing. One reached out, a tendril of darkness that engulfed two human warships. They folded in on, themselves collapsing into singularities and winking out of existence. Drake's heart raced. They weren't just powerful. They controlled the fabric of space and time. Orion's voice came again, urgent. "You cannot fight them here. They are rooted to this reality. We must sever their connection." Drake's eyes widened. "How?" Orion's ship shuddered. More ancient plates fell away, revealing a massive gate at its core. Through the source, to the heart of the architect's domain, to the place where they reshape worlds. The gate powered up, spiraling vortexes of energy coalescing at its center. The architects reacted, shifting. Their tendrils reached out to stop it. Drake barked the order. "All ships defend Orion, buy him time." The human fleet surged, fighting. With desperation. Ship after ship fell, but the architect's attack slowed. The vortex drew their energy toward it. Orion's voice was firm, resolute. "I will take us there, but once inside you must destroy the anchor, sever them from our universe." Drake hesitated. "And what happens to you?" A pause. Then, "We were never meant to exist. Once this anchor is gone, so are we." The weight of it crushed Drake's chest. Orion and his people were remnants, echoes of a timeline erased, but they were humanity's only hope. Drake stood tall. "Then let's finish this." The gate opened, engulfing the Valor and the remaining fleet. The universe bent, reality folding in on itself as they plunged through the vortex. On the other side, they found it. A realm of pure creation, shifting matter and energy woven by cosmic architects. And at its center, a colossal structure pulsed with power. The anchor. The architects descended, their forms unraveling into streams of code and light, twisting through the realm. They attacked, warping space, shattering ships with a thought. Drake fought through the chaos, pushing the Valor toward the anchor. "Vega, target the core. Full power." The ship's weapons overloaded, energy screaming as they fired everything they had. The anchor shuddered, cracks forming as the realm itself trembled. Orion's ship surged forward, its own power focused into a final devastating blast. For those erased. For those forgotten. The beam struck the anchor. Reality shattered. The architects howled, their forms breaking apart, cascading into nothingness. The realm collapsed, folding inward as the vortex pulled them out. Drake caught one last glimpse of Orion's ship, standing resolute against the end of existence. Then, it was gone. The Valor emerged back into real space. The void was eerily quiet. The wreckage was gone. The Guardians dissolved. The architects were no more. But so were the forgotten. Vega whispered, "He did it. He saved us." Drake looked out into the darkness, the weight of sacrifice heavy on his shoulders. "No," he said softly. "They saved themselves." He stood straight, his voice firm. "And we will remember them." The HSS Valor turned toward Earth. The stars, silent witnesses to the end of a war that had erased itself from time. But history would remember the forgotten, and humanity would never be unshaped again. Enjoy next story. The endless expanse of space stretched out before them, a dark, empty void dotted with the faint light of dying stars. The silence was eerie, the kind that comes just before a storm, before everything falls apart. Thousands of ships hovered in formation above Royan Prime, a fragile alliance held together not by trust, but by necessity. High Captain Zorth stood on the command deck of the Sovereign Wrath, his claws gripping the cold metal railing as he stared at the tactical hologram. The fleet was a mix of species, each bringing their own strengths and designs. Human warships armed with kinetic weapons and layered shields, Royan dreadnoughts built for sheer firepower, and the sleek, energy-efficient cruisers of the Tari. But would it be enough against the Erebus? His eyes flicked to the Indomitable, humanity's most powerful warship. Even among the massive fleet, it stood out, its armor black as space, its shape hunched like a predator ready to strike. Captain Elias Grant was on that ship, the man who had first warned the galaxy about the Erebus, the only one who had seen them up close and survived. The silence didn't last. A ripple passed through space, subtle at first, like the universe itself had taken a sharp breath. Then darkness spread. They had arrived. The Erebus ships didn't appear on sensors. They didn't warp in or emerge from known space lanes. They just were. One moment, there was nothing. The next, their grotesque forms pulsed in the void. Were they ships? Creatures? It was impossible to tell where biology ended and technology began. Their surfaces twisted with living metal, shifting and reshaping into strange, ever-changing patterns. Some glowed with a sickly light, their hulls covered in the skeletal remains of past victims. Others looked like twisted, corrupted versions of ships they had absorbed, ghostly and unrecognizable. And then they moved. The lead Erebus ship lunged forward, splitting apart like an insect unfolding, revealing a writhing mass of tendrils tipped with a glowing green light. 100 organic lances shot out, cutting through space like whips of liquid death. "Shields up! Fire all forward batteries!" The command came from a dozen admirals at once. Space erupted into chaos. The humans fired first, massive railgun. Rounds screamed through the void, slamming into the Erebus ships with the force of a meteor strike. Some tore through the twisted black armor, sending bursts of violet flame into the void. Others simply vanished, disintegrating before they could hit. The Erebus adapted instantly. The Royan dreadnoughts followed up with plasma lances, scorching through the strange flesh-metal hulls, making the ships convulse as if they were alive. But then the Erebus struck back. A Tari cruiser was the first to fall. A beam of spiraling energy pierced its shields like paper, and in an instant, the ship was gone, not destroyed, but absorbed. Its matter was pulled into the Erebus ship like water into a sponge. The screams of its crew echoed over the comms before cutting off abruptly. Zorth clenched his fists. This was worse than anyone had described. "All Dominion ships, hold formation! Keep pressure on their flanks!" The Indomitable surged forward, moving like a predator. It unleashed a barrage of kinetic fire, slug after slug slamming into the lead Erebus ship. But the creature ship twisted. It learned. Adapted. And then, it did the unthinkable. It opened. The Erebus ship split apart into jagged pieces, revealing a gaping maw of writhing tendrils and churning molten energy. Without warning, it lunged. "Brace!" The Indomitable barely dodged as the Erebus ship swallowed a nearby Union vessel whole, consuming it, leaving nothing but twisted debris behind. The remains of the ship shifted and reshaped, becoming something new, something Erebus. A horrifying realization hit Zorth. They weren't just destroying ships. They were adding them to their own fleet. Target their cores. Don't hit their hulls directly. Grant's voice was calm but urgent. "They're absorbing energy. Aim for their weak points," Zorth snarled. "Let's see how they handle this." The Sovereign Wrath powered up its singularity cannons, ancient weapons that fired miniature black holes, devouring anything they touched. The first shot hit the Erebus ship, tearing a hole in its hull. Black tendrils thrashed as the wound collapsed, in on itself. The Erebus shrieked, a sound that echoed through every comm channel. It was hurt, but it didn't die. The wound sealed. The ship's flesh rippled, reshaping and hardening. It had already adapted. Zorth cursed. "They're learning. Faster than we thought." The battle had just begun, but they were already losing ships by the dozen. The Erebus weren't just killing. They were consuming, assimilating, growing stronger with every attack. Then something changed. The Indomitable surged forward, ignoring the wreckage and incoming fire. Its forward bays opened, and Zorth's eyes widened. What are they? He had seen humans use railguns and plasma missiles, but this was something else. The Indomitable detached sections of its own armor, releasing thousands of drones armed with plasma bombs designed to disrupt molecular bonds. Fire at will! The drones swarmed the Erebus ships, exploding inside their wounds, stopping them from regenerating. The Erebus shuddered, their forms losing cohesion. For the first time, they retreated, not in panic, but to regroup. They had tested the alliance and were preparing their next move. As the Erebus vanished into the void, Zorth let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They had survived, barely. The fleet had lost a third of its ships. Countless lives were gone in an instant. He turned to Grant. "They weren't trying to win, were they?" Grant stared at the empty space where the Erebus had been. "No, they were scouting." Zorth's voice was grim. "Next time, they won't just test us. Next time, they'll finish this." The galaxy was at war. The battle over Royan Prime was just the beginning. Reports flooded in from the outer sectors, entire colonies gone silent, fleets wiped out in hours. The Erebus weren't just winning, they were consuming everything in their path. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Grant watched the Galactic map now covered in red zones marking infected systems. The war was turning against them. Fast, the first full-scale Erebus invasion hit Giron, a heavily fortified Dominion stronghold. 10 battle groups stood ready, But this wasn't like Royan. Prime. The Erebus didn't arrive through warp lanes. They appeared as if space itself had folded, spilling their grotesque ships into the system. The Alliance fired everything they had, but the Erebus adapted in real time, their ships twisting and reshaping to counter every attack. Then came the psychic pulse, a silent scream that corrupted minds, turning crews against each other. Ships fell silent, their crews absorbed into the Erebus hive mind. Giron was gone, not destroyed, but absorbed. The planet itself twisted into something alien, then vanished entirely. The Alliance fractured. Some species fled, others turned on each other. The Erebus kept spreading. On the Sovereign Wrath, Zorth faced the truth. They couldn't win. "We have to retreat," he said. Grant shook his head. "There's nowhere to run. If we don't stop them, they'll consume everything." The Erebus attacked Earth next. The greatest fleet in history waited in orbit, but it wasn't enough. The Erebus emerged from within the fleet itself, using captured ships to turn the battle into chaos. Earth's surface was consumed, cities absorbed into the Erebus mass. In a final act of desperation, humanity activated Project Excalibur, a weapon designed to erase planets. Earth was gone, but the Erebus had been wounded. For the first time, they hesitated. The remnants of the Alliance gathered for one last stand. Their plan was simple: find the Erebus hive core, the source, and destroy it. The Indomitable led the charge into the abyss, where the source waited, a monstrous, living construct the size of a moon. The battle was chaos, the Erebus twisting space itself to stop them. Grant piloted the final strike craft, carrying the last Excalibur warhead. "This is it," he said. "No turning back." He plunged into the heart of the source and detonated the weapon. The Erebus screamed, a sound that shook the stars and then collapsed. Every infected ship, every corrupted world was erased. The war was over, but the cost was unimaginable. Earth was gone. Humanity was scattered. The Alliance was broken. But life went on. The survivors rebuilt, becoming nomads among the stars. They had won, but the galaxy would never be the same. And in the darkness beyond known space, something watched and waited. Quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed.